I think it means Sony needs to scrap the PSP and redo it. That sounds kind of drastic, and I don't think they're going to do that yet. But I think that really the best chance they have for success is to abandon the current PSP design and find a system that hits the sweet spot more. They need to get rid of the optical drive.
Yep.
I know that they're really, really set on their proprietary formats, and if they don't have an optical drive, they're not going to want to do carts. They're going to want to do like memory stick downloads, which means they won't be selling, packaged media. So there's a lot to work out with that. But the optical drive is the worst thing about the PSP. It makes it fragile. It makes it battery hungry. It makes the load times terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
All three of those things are anathema to portable gaming.
From a hardware standpoint, from a design standpoint, there's quite a few more things wrong with the PSP.
Sure. The ergonomics of it, that's something else also.
So you do think that they are going to just scrap it, or
I don't think they'll scrap it right away. I mean, there's still some life left in it. Metal Gear just came out,
right?
And you have Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. You have Final Fantasy
Tactics. That's what I'm wondering. It's like you've got.
Right.
You have
some games coming.
Right.
And, Square seems to still be supporting it, but you can definitely see with the not only Dragon Quest IX, but other games, Square and others are like. I don't see as much for PSP in the future.
Okay. I don't think that the entirety of the problem is with the design of the PSP. It's with developers being insistent on, and you actually alluded to this in. Attempting to continue to create PlayStation 2 experiences for a PSP. Luminous works so well because that's a different game experience all the way around.
Right. I really think that the kind of game experiences you had on 8 and 16-bit systems, the classic gaming experiences, are what work best on portables, just because there's so much less to worry about. They have simpler interfaces. They have fewer depth of field issues,
Right.
But there's so many things in the technology, the design, and also the marketing, the image of the PSP that are antagonistic to that kind of game development.
Right, which is such
Sony
a shame
themselves
because,
are antagonistic to
because
that
the
kind of game
PSP itself, I still stand by as one of just the awesomest. I think it's an awesome portable game system. I love playing. There are games that are great on it, like with fixed perspective RPGs, like that game that Ray is always singing praises about, My Summer Vacation. Great on PSP. It's so great. A side scroller like Loco Roco is so great on PSP.
Well, Loco Roco is a very
Right.
16-bit kind of game experience.
You spoke to this too. They're fixed. You're right. That's why that's why Wipeout Pure is so good on PSP. It's actually kind of a fixed view. I'm thinking about this more, and you're absolutely
Loco
right.
didn't do very well, though. You know what I mean? Like, they can create these great games on PSP, but they're not hitting that audience because I don't even know what the PSP audience wants at this point.
But what I'm almost saying is
they don't want UMD.
I hate this idea that the PSP design is wrong. I think that it's fine, and developers are doing the wrong thing with it.
Right.
I don't know. I think the PSP really does have some actual flaws. I think the DS has some flaws. I think it was a mistake for them not to give it an analog input, whatever.
Well, like on the PS...
But the PSP, I have trouble playing it just because it's not an enjoyable experience for me.
Well, is that all games or most?
It's just like getting out the PSP and playing it.
I can see how that's true. I stopped carrying around my PSP because it was actually too unwieldy for me to properly protect it.
Well, I think Phil
fragile.
Harrison said the other day how most people play their PSP at home. Sony's research has found that, and he wants to change that next year. What that means, we'll see. But
Kutaragi said that
slimmer,
before
more ergonomic system.
Before PSP launched, Kutaragi was like, I think most people are going to play this thing at home.
Right. It's kind of
it's like, what are you guys doing?
Push your PS3 instead.
They thought that they could break into the market by loading the box up with as much technology as possible, and as it turns out, that's not true. The problem is Nintendo has made this huge break from all of the norms of the video game industry that they've said, you know what, we don't have to do X, Y, and Z. Just because you think we have to be, pushing technology all the time, we don't have to. Just because you think there has to be an analog stick on it doesn't mean that we have to do that. They've broken so far from that, but Sony is tied to that. That's their business model. Their business model is we have the best technology, and that is how
Nintendo
we are going to win.
has succeeded by going against the grain. I mean, what's been their most successful franchise?
Nintendo has succeeded by telling you what you want.
No, Nintendo. Listen, what has been Nintendo's most successful franchise in the past 10 years? Pokemon. That started on Game Boy Color. No, Game Boy.
Right.
And the DS
right.
game does not look that different than the Game Boy Color
You're
version.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
that's
Why do you mention
because
this?
the point of Pokemon is not the technology, it's about the battling, and it's about sharing it with your friends. And so I think that they've picked up on elements like that, that the fact that visual technology is not nearly as important, especially for a portable experience.
Can we talk about
as
online?
Sharing with friends as, sure, online.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that has really baffled me, that Nintendo, after all this time of telling you, no, you do not want to play online, but like still being very much for like the multiplayer atmosphere, playing with friends and family. We make party games that you can play at home with people in your living, and those are like the games that I'm most likely to play with people
that's playing
in my living
locally.
room.
That's not
Right.
playing online.
But so they finally take their first plunge with the online arena with the DS, which.
But they're still not.
It's still really kludgy.
Yeah, it's kludgy, and they're not supporting it. And a lot of games. Every time we hear about a new game, we're like excited that it might have online, and it doesn't. Like,
Right.
They're doing okay. I mean, Pokemon has
it's getting better.
multiplayer online, and supposedly that's really awesome. But you have the whole friends code thing, and there's a lot about the DS online experience that needs refinement.
Yeah,
but I forget about all of it when I'm sitting in Starbucks and realize that I can totally play like a round of Clubhouse games while I'm sitting there, the book in front of me, and that's awesome. I didn't realize before, not even with the PSP did I realize, because it felt like playing online with the big screen console, so it didn't really mean anything to me when I went online with the PSP for the first time. It didn't really mean anything. It was a little bit like sitting in front of the TV online, just kind of the same feeling. But with a DS online, realizing that you can stop in a Borders and play a quick round of Tetris with someone somewhere. That's such a weird feeling to realize that is what is going on with the DS. I don't know why it feels so different on the DS than it does with the PSP. Because on the PSP, I'm just like, it should go online because it's a PS2.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of gotten away from the actual, like, the whole point of this podcast, which is retro games. But that's okay, because I really do feel that it's all kind of bound together. And
well, okay. So to get back to that, the rise of portables and sort of tie in what I was saying about Sony is that they now need to realize, and of course they have realized, that this is the direction that the Japanese market is going in. And thus it is very, very important for them to have a continued strong presence in the portable games market. But they can't do it with PSP. And they can't do it with a straight successor to the PSP that's like PSP with more, better graphics and a hard drive, But then the problem is they're so married to this concept as a company. Like even Nintendo, it wasn't easy for Nintendo to like break all of their engineers away from the advancement of technology and do something else.
Well, I really hope that the shakeups that Sony has been seeing in terms of management will actually work out for their benefit. I hope that it will kind of get rid of this entrenched perspective and philosophy for design, and that they'll start to work together better as a company, because you have all these little sections of Sony, none of which are collaborating.
Right.
And
the Sony untied philosophy.
Yeah, and it's I can see where there are some design advantages to that, but when it comes to creating consumer products, it's a disaster. There's no reason that Sony Music shouldn't be the biggest supporter, and Sony Movies shouldn't be the biggest supporter for PSP.
Yeah.
But they're not. So what the hell is up with that?
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. I guess now that we've talked a little bit, I do think that the classic style of gaming is in no danger of being pushed out the door as games like Dragon Quest IX come to DS,
right,
and Metal Gear comes to PSP or whatever.
Yeah,
because I think that's ultimately where the success for portable games is going to be.
Right.
And I think that a lot of the people who have been supporting GBA and DS all this time are already savvy to that. They have enough experience under their belts to realize that you can't force a console experience on a handheld system.
Absolutely.
So we'll still get our Ninja 5.0s and our Pokemons and whatever.
And if you want real old games, they're going to be available.
I'm sure that the next DS will have a virtual console of its own.
Yeah. Yep.
You can download classic GB games, and
wouldn't that be
if they don't get that running
Mario
on DS
Land
now, shouldn't they? I mean, really, shouldn't they be?
They
doing
really
that?
should, but I don't know if the hardware is really conducive to it.
I mean, but the PSP should be doing it right now too.
Well,
I mean,
it's got the PS1 games. If you have a PS3,
which no one does, so it's irrelevant.
Right.
It's like, I mean, I don't know when that's going to start up where you can actually download it just to the PSP itself. But
why on earth Sony doesn't have a PlayStation Store on the PSP set up, not just for PS1 games, but for music and movies? And what is wrong with them that's not happening?
Let
Sony
me bring
Untied
up
is the
that
problem.
really amazing message board thread in response to the gaming
The
generation.
community manager strikes.
What? I'm just bringing it up, you guys. I'm just bringing it up, and it's in response to that wonderful feature article that what's his name?
Sean Struck.
Sean Struck. Thank you. Sean Struck wrote the gaming generation, which is about gamers getting older, gamers who grew up with retro games.
Right. Our people.
Who are our people, who are for the first time finding themselves without a lot of time, and are actually, and so obviously in this 7-page thread that is ongoing, and there's a spin-off thread, I give up consoles for handhelds, which is 2 pages and growing. But the crux of the gaming generation thread is all of these people saying, man, I don't have any time. I got the wife and kids. I've got my job. I don't have any time to really commit to an Epic on the home console right now. So I'm turning to Epics on my DS. And you have just a thread full of grown gamers who are talking about what a godsend their DSs are, because this is the ultimate in maintaining a gaming habit and time management.
It is true. It is true.
It very much. That's really why I started supporting GBA and DS back when I did, because I have trouble finding time to actually sit down at a console and play. But a portable game, I can play on the bus, I can play on the train, I can